Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. This is the final interview episode of our 2025 season. After this, we've got one more group pod and then it's a break. It's an off season for the podcasters as we head into the 2026 season. I'm really excited for this final episode to be chatting with a friend for a change. David Spindler, neuroscientist, cognitive performance strategist, brain whisperer to the stars. Just in general, really cool guy. Hello.
Oh, wow. What an introduction. Thank you, Abby.
Was it really? Because
that was amazing. I'll take that every day of the week. Thank you very much.
I was gonna how do I throw the PhD in there? Yeah. Fancy.
I'm not sure. Do you need to after that amazing introduction?
Well, thanks so much for chatting with me today. I think that we on the podcast talk a lot about mental health and our own struggles with various things with our brains, and in cycling in general, in sport, actually, like all sports, it's become a more common topic to talk about mental health and the importance of training your brain as much as you're training your body. So I wanted to chat with you a little bit about kind of the women's side of cycling and just sports in general, because you work with a lot of top cyclists, men and women, but you also work with a lot of other sporting people in various other sports. So I thought it would be really interesting to kind of get your perspective on some of the topics we talk about on the podcast all the time.
Go for it. Let's have some fun.
Is it fun to talk about?
So the answer to that is yes, because it's all a part of education, right? So if we talk about it more, it becomes more mainstream, which means the younger generation will find it a lot more easy or easier. That's not even a sentence or a word properly, to seek help or to even understand why their brain functions and does the way things that it does.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the things that we've talked about before is just the importance of, we've seen this trend over the last year of a couple like formerly taboo topics being brought up a lot from professional athletes, be it mental health or, like menstrual cycle, stuff like that. And by bringing it up, by talking about it, it is a little bit more, it's a topic that more people are willing to discuss, which I think is going to be really important for future generations, but is also means that the athletes that are in the peloton now can have it's something that connects everybody. So it's good that there are people that are willing to talk about it. And I've noticed that the more people have brought up something like mental health, the more it's been talked about. Like we saw after the Tour de France Femme this year, when Pauline won, and the discourse around how she kind of prepped her body for that win, that a lot more riders came out to talk about their struggles with eating disorders. Like there was a long list of riders who spoke up after that, and about like the perils of falling into the pit of watts per kilo. And yeah, that was a really interesting thing for me. It was like one of the defining moments of the season, I felt like, because it's something that women's cycling has been trying to dig itself out of for so long. I feel like in my generation, like everyone had an eating disorder. It was just kind of like a thing that you had a bike, you had kit, you had a coach, and you had an eating disorder. And nowadays it's not like that anymore. And so I think like there was a lot of riders that came out and talked about it. And it's, for me, like looking at that, it's so important for the younger generation to understand that, like, yes, watts per kilo is a thing, weight is important, but like Pauline did it in a way that she had a team behind her, and yes, like a very dedicated team monitoring her health as she was chasing this goal. And a lot of riders, A, don't have that, and B, don't chase performance in a way that is sustainable to their career or their lives, really.
Yeah, there's also a really big distinction here as well. So the big issue there is high performance sport in general across all domains is actually not a healthy pursuit in general. And that education's rarely given. So if we just look at either like the women's tour, there's no way that those women are more healthy at the start than what they are at the finish and what they are at the start. So in general, sport isn't a healthy, at the world-class level, isn't a healthy profession. But the education piece around it, which hasn't happened and needs to, the discourse needs to continue, is how to recover well enough to be able to then deliver that high performance piece as soon as possible for the next one, for whatever next goal that you're doing, right? So what I struggled with the thing with Pauline was the fact that what she did was a really high performance scenario. It was almost like she should have been made to feel guilty about that, and she shouldn't, because it was a high performance piece. And what she did was everything around it to be able to produce that performance. However, also the best thing is, on the flip side of that, was everyone saying that's not sustainable. Given the education piece of what she did, on the back of that, a lot of people then just went, "I've tried that. This is what I couldn't do. So therefore, then I had either maladaptive eating or some disordered eating, or it could even go into sort of other areas as well." And it actually started a rhetoric, which was amazing. And I actually had the opportunity at the time we had a really good conversation just between the two of us around that time frame on how do you then create the education for the younger generation on one, sport's not the high performance sport at a world class level is not necessarily a health that actually doesn't come into it a lot of the time. It's a performance based system, and it will always be. But how do you educate the athletes to be able to do that as healthily as possible? If that makes that was the conversation, and was still to this was one of my favourite conversations of the year. That one that we had, because that part I really struggled with from both sides, because there was no right or wrong here. Everyone was right, which is and it's a conversation that happened probably on the male side maybe 5 years ago. And this now performance revolution of now understanding that carbohydrates is not something that we need to be so afraid of. We can get performance and still fuel successfully. But you can also get performance and, from a female side, not have the hormonal imbalance that was happening in the past at the same time. That can still occur, 100%. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think like in this case, it was like the culmination of many years of many riders like clawing their way out of disordered eating habits and that mindset, and the sport professionalizing so rapidly that Visma Lease Bike could afford a team who were so dedicated to making sure that Pauline was doing this in a way that wouldn't impact her long term. And that's not something that your everyday rider can afford or has access to, but it is still like setting a precedent for how riders will need to prepare for races in the future if they want to beat Pauline. And so it was like this really interesting combination of things, but like, it's like like you say, like on the men's side, it's something that they've already been through. They've already, like, on the men's side, every team now has a nutritionist has something in place for their GC riders to, monitor. They're all working with apps and whatever. But on the women's side, it's not really been a thing. But now as the sport is becoming more professional, it is becoming more of a thing.
Also, it's far more a serious long-term effects for a female athlete than a male one in general. So what the long-term effects of disordered eating has shown, the research has shown that it actually affects females far greater than a male. And the sport in general, you're doing the sport at a time frame that you don't actually think that the hormonal imbalance is going to, your brain's not developed, most of the time, the brain's not developed enough to be able to then make those really high quality decisions for when you're 35, 45, 50, 60, however, like when you're in a rocking chair like me, So, but yeah, like it's the education part, the best part about that, and apart from the performance that Pauline put down in the first place, was that it actually brought forward an issue that was so large within the female peloton at the time, and from what I'm seeing, still is actually. So there's athletes at the moment that are saying, I'm taking a break because of I'm having some trouble. The amount of strength that takes to be able to just say, I'm actually taking a break for me. There's so many external pressures to perform. Is like the amount of strength that takes. I just take my hat off to that. I mean, there's a few females, a couple of high-profile ones, but there's a few females that's happened to in the last sort of 12 to 18 months, and it's just amazing. Like it should be celebrated. So and hopefully it will be at some stage.
Yeah. I mean, like with eating disorders and stuff, and the pressure to perform while also trying to navigate the pitfalls of being in an endurance sport like cycling. It's so like, it is really like an illness, right? Like it's in your head, like you rationalize everything by saying like it's part of the job. I've had coaches who have encouraged me to, not eat if like we've done like a really long, I had a coach that basically was like, okay, after any day it's like an easy day, like you can just skip dinner, just like throw some protein mix in some yogurt so that your stomach feels like it's got something in it, and go to bed. And like, yeah, it's, and you're like, okay, well, if my coach is telling me that, like my coach who has coached Olympians is telling me that, then they clearly know what they're talking about. So I'm gonna do that. And like watching a lot of former riders and like current riders who still struggle with the same thing, the same problems, or the same like mental pathways that it's so easy to fall down. What do you do when you're working with someone who is clearly struggling with something like this? Because I feel like you can't rationalize with someone. And I've had so many people like slide into my DMs and be like, I have a friend or like coaches who are like, I'm working with this young rider. She's like she's not eating, like I need some advice. And I always say like, I can't give you any advice because they have to figure it out themselves. Like there's nothing you can do.
If it becomes something that's quite a clinical observation, I'll actually send them to somebody that is far more advanced in eating disorders, or can give advice on that. Like I'm a 51-year-old male, so I understand that that I have some limitations in that respect. But the traits that you see in general when it comes to the eating disorders in general, it's one of perfectionism. It's about control. So when your life feels as though you're out of control, everywhere else. The thing that you can control is the amount of intake. And it feels as though, if that's exactly what you're going to do, I mean, there's performance anxiety is really big in like a really big comorbidity, body image concerns in general. This has nothing to do with the athletic performance piece. Social media's got I have a large issue with social media in regards to that piece as well.
Yeah.
Obsessive compulsive traits in general is a really large comorbidity there. So what would actually happen is us working on those things rather than the eating phase, and then steering them in the direction to get the help that they need when it comes to the eating piece, if that makes sense. Because that's not my area of expertise. I sit quite clearly in that area of expertise and just go, here's the person that you need to see. He or she is amazing. This is the person that would suit your personality. I've got a lot of people in my network that I can then just push them towards. And then I go, you need to go and have a chat with them. And then we can all have a conversation about how we look to either reframe the behavior or change the behavior that's leading to you thinking that you need to control whatever it is that you need to control.
What are some of the common things that you see with women in professional cycling?
At the moment, one of the big things is actually fear in general.
Interesting.
The speeds have gone up so high in the last 3 or 4 years, and bunch control and how athletes either descend or their fear of being in the bunch and their fear of crashing that's actually one of the bigger things. Yeah. And then from that, it's like performance anxiety because they actually don't want to be anywhere near they don't want to be near the bunch because it's got to a place where and it's actually on the men's side too. This is not a women's specific thing when it comes to that fear piece. It happens in the men far more than what their testosterone will let them say. However, it's definitely there, but the women are getting it exponentially faster at the moment because the percentage of them increasing in speed in general is also higher. So they're getting a really quick, it's gone exponentially higher over the last couple of years. And that fear of crashing, fear of being in a bunch, fear of close contact that's possibly one of the bigger things. Second thing would be probably body image in general. As a father of a 13-year-old girl, that I struggle with that being quite a thing. Low self-esteem as a result. That's kind of going slightly out of it from what I've seen because there's more people the staff are getting more professional.
Yeah.
They're there because they want to be in sport in general, not because, again, there's a women's perspective to it. So you're getting, there's been some really high profile cases there that probably shouldn't. And I wish that there wasn't. However, that hopefully is getting taken out of the sport because of the more professionalism piece. And that doesn't happen as much in higher profile sports like football or something like that as well. Like they've been taken out 10 to 15 years ago, which is amazing for the sport, and it needs to be done at a more rapid rate, but progression's progression.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that like with the professionalism of the sport, the pressure to perform and like stress when it comes to signing a contract is also something that you've seen a good bit of.
Oh, 100% yes. Also, the dollar value of those contracts have gone up. That's gone up far more in the last 5 years. And people go from paying their way to do something to getting a fairly decent some, at least anyway, getting a decent wage now. And the pressure to perform because they're actually getting paid something, rather than them thinking, no, I'm actually, but they're paying me for my potential, not because I should have to perform. Slightly like on the men's side, that doesn't happen. It's far less. It's like, no, they're paying me this amount of money. I'm worth it. I'm worth it. I may not get the results but they think that they get, but they also gambled on me and I gambled on them.
I mean, that's kind of like a female thing. I feel like they're paying me this, so I need to live up to that number that they've put on me.
That happens as a byproduct though. So rather than something that is at the forefront, so someone's willing to gamble X amount of money with any contract in any sport for you. This is how much they think that you're worth for the X amount of period of time that you're doing it. So therefore, that's like a gamble, right? Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
As long as you're doing your best and you're not actually like just taking the money, that shouldn't even be in your thought process.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of like circles back to controlling the controllables and
yeah, but also that comes into that low self-esteem, performance anxiety, and the fact that it's the sport in general, the money from that part has boomed to a point where they're like, well, 2 years ago, I couldn't even afford like brake pads. Like they had to come out of my whatever, and now I just have to ring somebody up and just go, and you'll get 10 of them. Yeah, exactly. Right. So there's a reason for the behaviours that is getting displayed, and that'll go over time. I think that part.
It's so interesting to me, like all of the different knock-on effects of the sport professionalizing so rapidly that like the individual athlete and kind of what it does to an individual athlete internally is not something that we talk about too often, because a lot of the times it's like what's happening to the sport as a whole and how the rapid professionalization has benefited the top teams and meant that the gap between the top teams and the smaller teams is way bigger. And we talk about that all the time, and like all of the problems with races going away from the calendar because of the World Tour calendar and how much it suffocates the rest of the calendar. And like those are all common things, but I don't think we talk too much on the podcast about like the rider themselves and how much like the pressure of the sport being so much more because it's just the growth has been so rapid. And riders who have been in the sport for a really long time, for them, they probably don't feel it as much, but like it's the riders who kind of entered the sport on the cusp of the professionalization that are maybe feeling it more. Because you have like riders coming into the sport now who are younger and they don't know what it was like trying to survive back in the day when they were like, oh, this is your $8,000 a year salary. Now you have to ride for us like it's your life.
Yeah. But also that comes with a different conversation, because those people are then saying they've gone from under 19 whatever to all of a sudden being at the Tour de France or the Giro or whatever big racing, Flanders or whatever big races that there actually is. So hang on a minute, I was riding my local club race 6 months ago.
Yeah,
that's still happening. That's still happening on the women's side. That must be mind blowing to a 19-year-old or a 21-year-old or someone who's 26 as an ex-rower. That still happens.
It's not making the fear any less for anyone in the peloton when you have people coming in who are like fresh out of their local club and get spotted and scouted and all of a sudden they're at the Tour de France. And then you have the older riders who have been around for a really long time and can go really fast and can take those corners in a special way. And everyone's afraid of everybody.
Yeah, okay. That's going to slowly get like that will change over time, just because the sport will grow and the athletes will the expectation on the athletes and the athletes' expectation of the sport will change, just because of the professionalism piece. That's the way that I see it anyway, because that's what's happened. That's what happens in every other sport. You look at women's football, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they struggle with almost exactly the same things as what cycling's having at the moment.
We think that we're super unique, but we're really not.
Well, we are, because the sport is actually so much tradition. It's within the sport.
Mm.
Women's cycling just has come into the tradition, and they didn't make that tradition. Somebody else did, but they still have to then somehow, or for some whatever reason, go, no, that's not the way that we do it. Why not? We can do whatever way we want.
That has been an interesting pitfall for the sport.
Yeah, but we've had this conversation as well, though, Abby. It's like, it's okay to be a different sport. It's okay to race things differently. Like, it actually makes it a far greater spectacle if they're raced differently in general.
The worst thing that women's cycling can do for itself is just follow the men's version.
Yeah, because that's going great for them too, isn't it?
Yeah.
They have
super good
going on. So
yeah.
I mean, there's a really prominent voices within that women's cycling world that really try and push that with I think it's called the Cycling Alliance, or actually the name escapes me.
The Cyclist
Alliance,
really
pushing their version. That's it. Yeah, sorry. My apologies to them, because they do a great job.
And they listen to the podcast. They're
looking to not create a women's version of a men's tour. It's the sport needs to be the sport, because it's different and it's amazing for the spectacle that it delivers. I find that piece when they infuriating when you read some articles. It's just like, well, women's cycling doesn't do this, but the men do this. Why are you even talking about that? You're talking about apples and oranges. It's still same fruit, but that's about it.
So for you, like working with women in cycling and men in cycling, are there like any differences between the two athletes when you're working with them, and like any like really glaring differences? Because I feel like a lot of the things that you would work with an athlete on would be quite similar actually between the two.
Yes, with the caveat that the neurobiology of females is slightly different to that of males, especially in around their hormonal cycle in general. So where they're at and what happens for females is massively different within the given weeks than what it is a man. I've never had that conversation with a male, but I have. So there's that. However, true, right? So I'm coming at it from that women's perspective.
Yeah.
But so a lot of the conversation and the amount of load that because the brain doesn't care where stress comes from, whether it's the body stress or a mental stress, actually doesn't care. And where that stress comes from is different from a male to female. It has to be, right? So therefore, some of the conversations that I have there are different as a result of that. Secondly, it's still bike racing. They still have the same, there's disordered eating within the males, there's the performance anxiety within males and females, there's body image. The men won't tell you that, but there's body image concerns, males and females. The external pressures from team, family, all the rest of the stuff, they're all similar. Yeah. So now we're getting to the stage, which is amazing, that female athletes are actually the key service providers for a family. Which, like 5-10 years ago, actually there was probably 4 athletes that you could say that to within professional cycling. right?
Mm-hmm.
That changes the dynamic across a family perspective as well. Like, you have to be selfish to be to be world class at whatever you do. So that selfishness within a traditional household could cause some really like quite tough conversations. And so yeah, you're smiling there, Abby, because you have a husband as a professional athlete, and you know those conversations with two small children.
Yeah, but there's some athletes that you think maybe they should be more selfish, but
yeah. So yes, but the conversations they're the similar ones, right?
Mm.
So now we're getting to a stage which is, I'm so happy about that the remuneration is to a point where you can actually do the sport at a world-class level and not actually cut any corners.
Yeah. I mean, it's been really cool to watch some of the women in the sport, like, and then like talking to Lizzie, whose, husband held down the fort with 2 kids while she was racing. And it's just like, it's just so cool. It's not something that I ever would have, I could have, like, if someone had told me that in my time covering the sport, I would have been able to watch someone give birth and be the center of a team, be the first rider signed to a team while pregnant, come back, win Paris-Roubaix, and then have another kid and still continue their career, I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah, so that happens on in world-class marathoning. There is some really high-level female marathoners that have had children and come back, and they're actually better for it.
Oh yeah, mom strength is like a real thing.
And so the fact that that's starting to happen, and the means is there to allow that to happen as well, means that people aren't falling through the cracks and they can extend a career. So yeah, it's the best. I love it.
In the vein of more mothers being in the peloton and kind of the evolution of the sport, something that you and I have talked about and I've heard you talk about before is the importance of balancing life and sport, and how your home life and how your off the bike life impacts your performance on the bike.
Yes. So it's actually called allostatic load. So the amount of overall load that you have in general, and if that's too much, then performance goes down. So what we look to do, and what I do with all of my athletes, to actually figure out where that stresses are coming from. It doesn't have to be, it is never just cycling. It's never just the sport. It is, what is the whole, and what are the stresses? How do we maximize your potential in general? What are the biggest issues that lead to the performance decrements or make you go faster for longer or whatever? So yeah, so the balance in general is a huge one. You can be out of balance, but that's one thing that isn't educated too well. You actually can have periods of really out of balance in general, as long as that there is light at the end of the tunnel for that balance to sort of the seesaw to come back a fraction. But yeah, it doesn't have to be a perfectly even seesaw. It can sort of go up and down whichever way that you need to. But yeah, that balance is a huge one.
Well, I feel like with sports, but also with life, like everything is a phase. Like, I think that people, like, if you have a bad day training, or you're not where you wanted to be going into a race or something, like for a rider specifically, like there's this tendency to kind of see it as the world is falling, the sky is falling, and like the whole season is ruined, and how are we ever going to get through this? But like it's like taking a step back and realizing that everything is just a phase. Like, your baby won't always be teething. even if it feels like it.
That's my conversations in January and February. I missed a day of training because I was sick, or my daughter my daughter has a fever, so I had to shift training from one to two. Will this change me being the GC leader at the Giro? Like, no, only if you let it is the answer to that. Because one session's not going to change the career trajectory. Multiple of them will, but So how do we minimise the overall stressor in general, and how do we maximise fun?
Well, then you can snowball. If you're like focusing on what's going wrong right now, you can like it makes it bigger and bigger in your head, and then it's even harder to climb out of that. Whereas like if you've worked on taking in the larger picture and looking at something and being like, okay, like today didn't go my way, tomorrow might not go my way, but as long as we can keep moving forward, then it's not the end of the world. And also the cycling season is quite long. I think people forget that there are points in the cycling season where if things go wrong, like you can pick up the pieces, even if it's not exactly what you thought.
Yeah. So that restructuring and reframing should be done anyway, like throughout the season. If you look at a couple of years ago, Jay Vine had a pretty massive crash and broke his back, and it was last year, the year before. But he's come back and actually successfully delivered some really high level performances towards the end of that same season. Sometimes you get so focused on the little things that you've taken that 500-foot view and just go, what's the overall picture? What's the overarching theme that we need to deliver here? Just as an aside too, one of the other big issues that we actually see is people falling out of love with the reason why they do the sport in general. Mm-hmm. So they forget that why they started it is because they actually loved the freedom and the actual space that riding a bike gives them. They're so concerned about the 3 by 20 minutes and looking down at it has to be this specific number that they haven't seen a barn on the right-hand side of a climb ever. And it's like, you've done this 50 times. Why do you? It's like, so if they are falling out of love and that what they classify as motivation struggles, one of the things that I actually get athletes to do is send me a picture of something that they'd never seen before on a ride that they've done multiple times.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's so fun because then you can because then you just stop and just go, what? How many actual professional cyclists are from Andorra? There's not many. 0?
Is there? Yeah. So how many professional cyclists live in Andorra?
Way too many.
A lot. Yeah. So they're in a space that may only be a 10-year period that they're there. And if they don't see that barn on the right-hand side or a sculpture on the left-hand side of a road or whatever it is, which happens a lot up in Andorra, there's lots of different really, really spectacular things that if you just take some time. But yeah, I've got my work phone is full of these really random photos of things that have made athletes smile that they've never seen before.
I love that. That's such a cool
they're
thing
just so caught up.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, like you get tunnel vision and it can be beneficial because you're focusing on, your job, but when the job is so all consuming, like being a professional athlete, like you have to also enjoy it. Like you can't, I feel like there's no way that a rider can succeed in the sport or like get results. I mean, it depends on your definition of success, but like if you're if you're a winning rider, if you're like miserable doing what you're doing, then it's just not going to go well.
It's not sustainable either.
Yeah.
It's just not sustainable. Goes to a point where I have to increase an arbitrary number of pixels on a small computer screen in front of you, like whatever number that looks like, whether that's a good number or a bad number, whatever that means, right? I can do exactly the same thing and have that same amount of number, and I don't have to be looking at the screen. I can actually look around me and do some, for exactly the same attentional control, do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
But actually have a totally different experience doing it.
Yeah.
Changes the motivation, changes the sense of worth to be able to then deliver whatever performance that is.
And I mean, then you come back home with like a completely different feeling in your chest, like a completely different feeling overall of how the ride went. You're not focused purely on what those numbers were during the ride. And that makes your home life better as well. Cause like if for riders who do have a partner or a family at home, like when you're coming back from a ride that you've deemed to be like a failure because of numbers on a screen, it makes the whole house is stressed, which then feeds into not having a good balance of life and sport.
Yeah, but that's poor sleep, poor recovery. Next session's also compromised. Like it's like you said before, it does snowball. When like there's a few athletes that I work with that are really quite closely, and some like the amount of times that I'll have a phone call on the side of a road, just going, I can't finish this session. I've got 3 weeks to the tour, or I've got there's a week before. I need to get to I need to be able to perform at a bike race or a car race or whatever it is. And you go, hang on a minute, you've just done 6 months worth of work. And you're so concerned that the last 4-minute interval you couldn't do. Like that's more of a recovery piece than the fact that you could do it. You could do it last week. So what's the difference?
Yeah. I don't know if you saw Lotte Kopecky's interview recently that she did where she talked about how her targeting the tour this year like really impacted a lot of like mentally the stress of targeting the tour as a GC rider when she's not traditionally been a GC rider. Like she's had GC success, but isn't like your cookie cutter GC type. And how like the like back again to like body wise, trying to conform into what a typical GC rider would look like or weigh, or what the people around her thought that she needed to watts per kilo to be able to win the tour. And how a couple weeks before the tour, she was just like, I'm not doing this anymore.
On the men's side, I reckon I get that every second year. Yeah. Like a really high GC rider. There's only one that can actually deliver and win. Yeah. Right. And in a different world, she's produced enough of a performance that could have won the Tour de France, given a different set of scenarios, right? That doesn't mean that she's failed at the preparation phase. Just the race didn't turn out the way that whatever. There's a different set of circumstances, and in if you do modeling of races, she could theoretically won that, given exactly the same people that are in that race. It's interesting to me to look at how Lotte prepared for the tour and like what we know about her preparation and how that went versus Pauline and the different team environments. Cause I think like something that we talk about is that cycling is a team sport, right? But it's very individual. Yes. The way that you train, like everyone has individual coaches, everyone has individual nutritionists, like you train alone, you live alone versus other team sports. And so it's a team sport that's an individual sport as well. But when you're in
in a team environment, like the team and especially the higher ups on a team make such a big difference for individual performance. And that's not something you can control as a rider.
No. So the actual neurotransmitter that makes that work really well is called oxytocin. It's exactly the same neurotransmitter that you emitted when you had your children. Oxytocin is the chemical that bonds people together, and it doesn't have to. It gets poorly named as the love chemical. It's not. It's a bonding chemical. So that also is what's needed, and it's really heavily linked to trust. And if there's no trust, there's no oxytocin, which means that it's really difficult to be able to deliver a team environment if there's 1, 0 trust and 2, no emission of oxytocin. So it wouldn't surprise me if that team had a lack of oxytocin, given my knowledge of some of the sporting environment there.
Well, I think like it's something that a lot of teams it's not just women's teams, like men's teams also struggle with balancing having these individual riders with individual goals and how the team manages the riders and the team overall goal and everybody's. And like some teams are really good at knowing exactly what each rider needs, and being able to cater to individual riders. But I think like one of the most important things that you can do individually is work with someone like yourself to be able to manage yourself in a team environment when you can't control what's going on around you. And like, I think that there's been, circling back to what we were talking about at the beginning, and like stigma and people talking more about mental health is like this push for individual athletes to work with somebody like you to help be able to manage scenarios where like you can't control your team, what your DS is doing.
Like when I first started, there was probably 3 total that actually did work in cycling. Now there's far more, and they're really good. I know that Little have a female practitioner. Ineos definitely do. You can get help when it's needed for Yumbo as well. They actually have a practitioner that works outside. In all honesty, there's actually not enough work in a professional cycling team for a full-time person who does what I do. Just not busy enough, pretty much in general. It works in a footballing environment because they've got 7 or 8 teams. They've got all the staff, and it's just too niche of a. And it's sad, but it's the actual reality of the sport. Is it, to answer your question, I'm going to say yes to that question. It's really important that you do. I'm not necessarily the person for that. I think there's lots of different practitioners that are amazing within that space. It's highly advantageous for anybody who allows themselves to be vulnerable enough to go and see somebody who has the skill set to be able to not only help them within the performance standpoint, but from an external standpoint as well. And that could be 2 different practitioners, but it could be just the one. It's definitely advantageous, but you have to get the right one, and they have to be the right person for you. And the right person for you is going to be someone that's totally different to the right person for the in the same team as you, or the same who you train with every day or whatever. Everyone's such an individual. So find a practitioner that's the right person for you.
I've always said that it's like dating, because you're building a relationship with somebody that's very intimate, and in order for it to be beneficial, you need to be able to open up and let people see the worst parts of you. Finding the right person to work with, it's a lot like finding a partner in a way. Like, obviously not a lifetime partner.
Yeah, but it's a part of your team. It's exactly the same as trying to find a coach, right? It's the same thing. You have to find the person that works with you to the best of your ability, because there's a really small window when it comes to your overall like sporting achievements. So, but yeah, like from my side, I don't work with I don't work well with everybody. Some people that works amazingly well straight off the bat. Sometimes it takes 6 months. Sometimes it just doesn't work. And I really encourage those people once we realise that it's kind of not moving forward to go and see somebody else. And I usually give them the opportunity to say, here's 4 or 5 people, go and see and seek them.
Well, I mean, I think we could probably keep talking for another hour, but it's been really great chatting with you, and thank you so much for making the time. I think it's like, yeah, like I said, it's something that we've talked about so much on the podcast, just the mental side of sport. So I wanted to bring in an expert to kind of dive into a little bit more.
No problem. Thank you very much, Abby. I appreciate the conversation.
Awesome.